Okay, Ananda, all set.
Thank you so much, Barb. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you for those that are either watching us live on YouTube or are going to be watching a recording later on. It's a great honor and something that really warms my heart to be serving our community in this role. My name is Ananda. My pronouns are she, they. I also answer with anything said with love. I identify as a multiracial Latinx Brazilian, and I am a former parent of the school district. My daughter graduated last year and attended La Follette in East. And I currently serve in a Madison School Board, and I'm the treasurer of the board. I have a co-chair who is running a little late because he's a really busy student with lots of commitments, and his commitment ran a bit late, but he will join us, and we'll transition him to our meeting soon. I wanted to begin our time together really grounding in where we are and just taking a little bit of a moment to honor and to give gratitude to a lot of things and a lot of work that has been done in our community so far. First, I wanted to acknowledge that we are in the indigenous land of Ho-Chunk people, and that's where our district sits on. And also wanted to acknowledge that this is not a new work. This is not the beginning work. There has been multiple iterations of groups like ours that have been committed to trying to figure out like how to support our students, how to support our district, in particular around safety issues. As we are navigating our agenda today, there'll be moments where we'll pause and talk through how can you all help shape what this committee can be. I think we have an amazing opportunity to imagine something that is more responsive, that's sharper, that is more in a greater level of alignment to where we are currently. And the other thing that's really exciting about this group is to have a co-chair as a student, and that might be the first time that happened in our district. So I'm deeply honored to do that with Gordon. We had set up a time for introductions, but because Gordon is not here and we're still waiting for one more member that's coming a little late, I'm gonna save that for a little later, and then we'll have an activity that we're doing a meaningful introduction with folks. And I wanted to invite Barb to talk about the third agenda item, and then we'll come back to the introductions. And the third agenda item is the public meeting protocol. And Barb, I'll pass it to you, but I hope that you all got a chance to review two documents that Barb set up for us. And if you haven't been able to, if you haven't done so, prior to today, but that you do as moving forward. And I know some of you are familiar with, but it's always a good reminder. Barb, I'll pass it to you.
Okay, thank you. So the first document, I want to just briefly talk about our introduction to Robert's Rules of Order. I have that document in there. Please, let me know or indicate by raising your hand or something if you are not able to access the documents in this meeting. Just let me know that. This, fortunately, for the Board of Education, mostly, Robert's Rules of Order are what we fall to if needed. It's not something that we use formally every day, but it is the process that we do use when it's necessary. And fortunately, we don't get too deeply into it either. It's something that is pretty basic for someone to get something on the table for the whole entire committee to talk about. It's just making a motion. It's having somebody second it. And then discussion ensues, and the chairperson is the person who controls that discussion throughout. And they are the person that you have to get their attention when you want to make a comment or do anything else, so that nobody is talking over each other. Fortunately, and that's probably about as deep as it gets. Some people can amend motions if they want to. Whatever's on the table, we try to take a vote and get that amendment squared away, and then go back to the original motion if we have to. And then there are parts of the meeting that are definitely formal, that require action. Calling a meeting to order is an action that the chairperson does. Adjourning the meeting is an action that requires a first and a second. Not all things require a first and a second, but we'll take care of that as we go along, depending on what we get into. But mostly, I think this is going to be about a really good deliberative conversation most of the time. But we will get to recommendations at the end of the process, and then maybe this will play more of a role. But this document that you have here, it's full of links about, you can get into it as deeply as you want to, but I would say overall, that's pretty much as deep as we'll need to get into it for our purposes of an ad hoc committee. But yes, I just wanted to point that out for everyone's reference.
And Barb, just for folks that are not familiar with the formalities of it, I wanted to say that I'm a pretty informal chair. And also when we need motions, I'll call it out. I'll make sure that I'll ask for that. And then if we need a motion or voting, either I'll let the group know, or I'll ask Barb to inform us if we need a motion or any form of procedure. So folks don't have to worry so much about remembering every single aspect if this is a new format for you. Thanks, Barb.
I'm also here to take minutes, so that's my major role here, is to take the minutes for this meeting. So if you need something to be part of the permanent record, you can say that. I'm taking minutes as we go along, and I will definitely, record motions, etc. But if you want something formally in the record, word for word, then just say that, and then we'll take care of that as well. So, and then if you have a question about what was said or anything, we can go back. So the next topic I want to move to is the open meetings law. There's a summary inside your documents. Definitely, I don't want to go through this word for word either, but you may know or not know that as you are an extension of the Board of Education as an ad hoc appointed by them. So you will function under the same rules as they do. And for open meetings law, and for our purposes, that means, okay, we're doing something virtual right now. If you were in person, we would be doing exactly the same thing. So we're on YouTube so that the community can see us. You are invited to this meeting via Zoom, and you need to keep your video on so that people can see you, because you're a voting member of this body, and they have the right to see and hear what you're saying. So mostly in general, I would say that the open meetings law requires that you do not do any business about this work unless you are in a meeting. There are many things that we can get into, but the general rule of thumb is I would not do any electronic communication. I would not do any emails. I wouldn't do anything with members of this committee unless you are in the meeting. You, of course, can talk to each other one-on-one, and you can talk to Ananda as the chairperson, but that's probably about the extent of it. Open meetings law is able to get, they can get text messages, they can get emails, they can take whatever it is that has anything to do with this committee as a part of that law. So it's just a good rule of thumb not to go there. So if you have something that you need to talk about this committee, come here and do that. And then, like I said, you can speak one-on-one to each other. So it applies to every governmental body. We're part of the school district, and the Board of Education is that governing body. So there's some requirements around this, but I think we're going to be in open session all the time. We don't have to worry about closed session requirements. All of these meetings will be open. They are all legally noticed in advance. There's a process that we have to go through for that. The media is made aware of it, and we publicize this in all kinds of ways so that we broadcast it as much as we can. And so unless you have specific questions around that, I think I will let the summary speak for itself, and you can take a look at that at your leisure.
And Barb, if I may add just one quick note around communication. I think the best point of contact is if you have a question or if you wanted to send an information out to folks is to email Barb. Barb will be the conduit. All the communication that I would like to share with you all, I likely do that through Barb as well. So Barb will email you all like she has been, and then she'll let me know if there's anything that you all respond or have questions with. Are there any questions on those two pieces of document? Barb, anything else from your end?
Just one point I really like to make it because it's so easy to do, because I email you a lot and that's my general mode of communication with you. It's just a good idea never to reply all. So just reply to the one person who sends it to you, and that'll keep you all good. So that's just a cautionary thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. And remember that that communication becomes a public record once is emailed to one of us, and can be subject for open record. So that means that someone can ask for, email communication between Barb and I for today, and then they'll be able to see the gazillions of emails that we exchanged today in preparation for this meeting. So wanted to let folks know that that's the public governance part of this conversation. So thank you, everyone. And I see that I have my amazing co-chair with us. So thank you, Gordon. And I'm glad you were able to join us. And I wanted to start, we'll come back to the introduction. And we have planned a little bit of an activity for this introduction because we're really trying to do this committee a little bit different. So I hope that you have a piece of paper or a Google Docs that you can open, and something that you can just take a couple of notes. And I'm gonna invite you all to think about identities and roles that are relevant to the work you are being invited to do today. Think about identities and roles that are relevant to the work we are being invited to do today around safety and wellness for young people. And we're going to give you all about 60 seconds to jot down some of those identities and roles for you. Are there any questions on what we're doing? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to put my timer. Okay, begin wrapping up, take a look at what you identified for yourself as salient and relevant identities and roles, and choose 3 to 5 identities that you like to share. And we're going to go around and begin sharing your name, share your pronouns if you like, your race and or ethnicity, your connection to the district, and those 3 or 5 identities that you choose to share. Once you're done, we ask that you please pass it to someone else. And so our motto, I have already shared, Ananda, she, her pronouns identify as a Brazilian, multiracial, Latinx. And I am the board treasurer for Madison School Districts. And 3 identities that I would like to bring up to you all is that I am a single mother of a former English learner student for MMSD. I also identify as an immigrant and an educator. Those are the identities that inform how I navigate the world. Gordon, I hope you're ready to go next.
Hey everyone, I'm Gordon. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a senior at East. And for my identities, I said I'm a first generation college student, incoming college student. I'm Black, I'm a scholar, and I just love, working with people. And I pass it off to Mr. Jones.
Thanks, Gordon. Good to see you. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Jones. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I am proud to be the president of Madison Teachers Incorporated. Before that, I was Dean of Students at Madison West High School, and before that, I was a positive behavior coach at Blackhawk Middle School, where I got the pleasure of working with Gordon when he was in middle school. So I had 5 identities that I specifically jotted down. One is that I'm a proud Black descendant of people who were once enslaved. My second identity is that I am the proud child of a Vietnamese refugee who came to this country searching for a better life. My third identity is I'm a proud educator of, specifically with people with different abilities. My fourth identity is that I'm a proud union member working on behalf of worker rights. And then my fifth identity is that I'm a support staff, where I have found my voice working with and supporting people in the education environment, no matter what their title or identity is at school. So those are my identities, and I appreciate being allowed to share them. Let's see here. I'm just going to see who I see next. Mr. Andre Johnson.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andre Johnson. I'm the Youth Justice Manager with Dane County Department of Human Services. My pronouns are he, him, his. My kind of connection to the district, and maybe going in part to the identities as well, I'm a parent of former students in MMSD, both from La Follette 2013 and 14 grads. I'm also a former MMSD student myself. We will not say what year that is from, because it's more than 30 years ago, so that, we won't go there. I'm an African-American male. I'm a social worker by profession, and a proud community member of Madison for more than 50 years. And I will pass it to Mari.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button. My name is Mari. I use the pronoun she, hers. I am a parent of 2 memorial students. My list of roles includes I'm a mom, I'm an LGBTQAI advocate. I am a listener. I am a brainstormer. And I'm by trade, I'm a linguist and an economist. And I'm going to pass it to Mia.
Hi, I'm Mia. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am a high school student at Memorial. And my three identities are I'm a student, I'm a scholar, and I am a writer and also an advocate for mental health and everything that has to deal with that. And I'm going to pass it to Sabrina.
All righty. I'm Sabrina Madison. Well enough, just call me Progress, so they yell it from across streets and rooms. I identify as a Black woman. The connection to the district is I tend to not follow district rules and just, do what I feel like needs to be done with kids who sort of need some sort of attention, if I'll just say that. But I'm here to follow the rules of the meeting, so I won't spend too long on this. And I remember Robert's rules from when I'm, leading Economic Development Committee. And so, so I guess for me, the identities really is my son graduated from West High School in 2013. Many of his kids became, not his kids, but his friends became like my kids as well over the years. I definitely identify really closely to lots of students. And I share similar backgrounds, especially students who might be experiencing some sort of struggles and their parents. So we tend to, I tend to be in conversation with lots of parents from at minimum East and West High School on a regular basis. I don't think I said I'm the founder and CEO over at the Progress Center for Black Women. Yeah, and at the end of the day, just think Sabrina, rule breaker, and you're good to go.
Who would you like to pass it to, Sabrina?
See, look, there we go, right there. Not enough coffee. Let's go over to Ruben, because I last saw him in a different role. So,
yeah, good to see you again, Sabrina. Hi, everybody. My name is Ruben Sanon. I use he, him pronouns. I'm Black, and my connection to this meeting and to the school district right now is that I serve as deputy mayor for Mayor Rhodes Conway. And some identities that play in this: I'm a former West MMSD student. I am a happy, proud Madisonian. I said I'm a Black male. And I'm the son of a first-generation college student who became a professor. So education is really big and important in our family. So I want to create safe places to educate yourself. And I will pass over to Rebecca. And you're muted, Rebecca.
Yep. Sorry for being late. I had a home visit. So we're doing identities, connection to the district, and what was the third one?
So 3 to 5 identities that
Okay.
is important as you were invited to be in this.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'm a Latina and Native American woman. I'm homegrown. I'm from Wisconsin. I am the daughter of a migrant worker who never obtained her high school diploma. My connection to the district is that I am with a program called Building Bridges, which is considered a tier 3 intervention program with a focus on mental health for children and families. I'm also the trauma trainer with a focus on historical trauma for the district. And I've been a psychologist for 30 years. And I will pass it to, who's left?
I think Dana.
Dana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dana Palaban. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the co-executive director and director of client services for the Rape Crisis Center here in Madison. My identities, I am a Black Creole. I'm a queer woman. I am a mother of a 17-year-old at West. I am also a violence prevention educator, and I am also a victim advocate. And my connection to MMSD is I am working with the wonderful students over at East on curriculum for sexual violence prevention. And my staff is in MMSD schools every day supporting survivors of sexual violence.
Thank you so much, Dana. Thank you all. This was beautiful to hear how you all identify yourselves and what's bringing you all to this space. Before I go any further, I just wanted to talk to just let you know, Barb, that there's, I think, a couple of students that were waiting for the invitation. Megan Finando and Lavenia Lupal. I don't know if you were able to forward them the calendar.
I'll check it out.
All right, thank you. So let's go next to the ad hoc committee draft plan. And this plan was developed by mostly Gordon and I, but with input by Maya Pearson, who is a current board member, and by our president, Ali Mudro, as well. And this, and then it was also had input from my colleagues at the board. We Gordon and I had done a lot of intentional work on crafting what the vision for this committee, but we wanted to take today as our first sort of getting to know each other, some time to talk about specific logistics about the committee, but also membership. We wanted to make sure that this committee had a representation of young people's voice. And so that's, I think, the first thing that maybe we talk about. Gordon and I and Barb and I have had lots of conversations around the challenges of and opportunities of having students on those committees. So we've been working through them, and we'd love to hear it, maybe first from both Gordon, you and Mia around how do we want to design the space for young people, in particular, giving young people an ability to vote, and also what does it look like? How do we want to do this setup of seats, right? Do we want to make sure that every school has a seat, or do we want to just have a number of young people, or do we want to have some rotating seats that we have, 2 or 3 voting members, and then students can rotate into that role. So let's start with you two, and then we'd love to hear from others if you all have seen models or if you have recommendations for how do we make sure that we are supporting young people's voice in this community. Gordon, do you want to start us out?
Yeah. So I definitely agree, like having youth have a voting seat within the committee will really help to ensure, the youth have a say in at large of the decisions made by the committee. In terms of rotation or just, overall how the status of the seats will go, I would say that it honestly depends. I think from when I was doing that, the youth recommendation, just there were like a lot of students interested, right? And I still wanted to find a way to get them involved in the process. I'm not for sure the best way to do that, but I am open to hearing what you all think on the issue. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with Gordon. I've heard a lot about, especially at my school, just talking about mental health and everything like that. And I see students that really do want to get involved. So I definitely do think that there should be at least one spot for each school, but even rotating people around or more spots for students, because I think that we have a voice too, and it deserves to be heard and included in our community. And yeah.
Thank you, Gordon and Mia. I'm going to open to the adults. Sabrina, I see your hand on the mic.
I'm like trying to find the raise hand feature. I wasn't sure if we able to use it. But I definitely agree with the young people that there has to be space for young people to also be decision makers within the committee. But my biggest concern, I just want to make sure that we're always thinking about those young people, but the reason for the committee, you know what I mean? Like it's a safety and wellness committee. So can we figure out how to include young people who might just be, like engaged in some issues or some things that are happening within the schools that are problemsome, despite them not being able to come to a meeting every couple of weeks or wanting to take part in this. But how do we create a sort of forum space or advisory space or even a one-off conversation to include their voices and their parents' voices? Because that's really important that young people who might be suffering consequences of their behaviors are part of the decision making as well for how to sort of like remedy what they're dealing with.
Sabrina, Michael, yes, you do have a raise hand function, and yes, if you'd like to speak, please raise your virtual hand or your real hand. I'll see you. Go ahead, Michael.
Amanda, I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt for a second. Just want to let people know that we don't have the chat mechanism. Just want to make sure that that's not an option in this. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Barb. I said y'all like a voice from God. Barb will know it all and just turn her mic on and help us. Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. So this actually is a question for the students here. I know when I was at West in the previous couple of years, there were attempts to work on like a mental health or students who were in support of mental health or really advocating for mental health. Are groups, to the best of your knowledge, do you know if there's like a citywide coalition of students who are working on that piece? Because I think like which wells of students we're pulling from. And I also really appreciate Sabrina bringing up the students that are currently engaged in terms of certain behaviors, in terms of just trying to get their perspective and seeing also not only if we can bring them in, but like where we engage them, like if that's going to be a Zoom or if that's going to be more of a in-person at a community center in a space where they're feeling a little bit more comfortable, just to kind of make sure we're respecting that. So, yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, Andrew.
Okay, thank you. You was having difficulties. I would agree with everything that's been said. I think the student voice is very important. I first want to thank both Gordon and Mia for being a part of this. It is very important that we hear directly from you as it impacts you, and you are the ones that know the most about how it impacts students. Two things that I would say. From my perspective, I think each school, it would be great if that could be the model of voting piece, because I think there could be different things that are taking place in those different schools. And to have the perspective from the individual schools, I think would be beneficial. Whether that's a rotation or not, I would leave that up to smarter folks than I. Also, I think ways as Sabrina, hey miss, hi, progress, I ain't seen you in a minute, to engage, and I don't like any of these words, but I'll use them, disengage students, kind of more non-traditional ones. Frequently when we seek student or youth voice, we don't always get to some that are impacted the most. So whatever that mechanism may be to bring in disenfranchised, I don't like that word, but youth, into those conversations and in whatever format they're comfortable with. So not fitting into our format, but seeking what is the best way to get that and how do we ensure, getting their perspective as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I share the sentiments. So perhaps what we could do moving forward, because I know there were students that Gordon had identified, and he's taking care of some of that right now, that were not able to make it today. And then I know Dr. Jenkins also has recommended some students. And if you all have some recommendations for students, let us know. I know we had, in particular, love to hear have students from Shabazz and Capitol High, which we haven't been able to confirm them. So beyond our comprehensive high schools, having the 2 additional schools as well. So I feel like there's a really good consensus to make sure that there is a seat for students. We'll figure out like how the voting spots and how, maybe we'll just open up the 6 spots. And if you have 2 students from Memorial at one time, we'll just accommodate for that. And then if we have last, and we'll just figure it out as we go. I wanted to honor the flexibility that students need to be serving. The next part around logistics is the frequency and time of our meetings, and also membership of our meetings. So let's start with membership first. When Gordon and I first started talking about who should be part of this meeting, we really looked at former rosters of similar versions of safety committees. And I took the time to personally call former members to really try to identify, what are some of the things that were highlights that worked out well, and what are some of the things that we could have done different. And one of the things that I heard pretty unanimously from multiple folks, both folks that are community members, but also district folks, was that there was a mismatch on the level of the conversation, meaning county folks would come in and have a very specific lens and wanting to have a very specific agenda. School district folks have a very specific way to talk about, different things. And you had community members that, were not very familiar with jargons and had a whole other approach. And so we wanted to intentionally curate what we are kindly calling a core team, to be formed by mostly systems folks and students. Intentionally, because we wanted to make sure that there is an action attached to this. So that's why we have Andrew Johnson and Ruben Sennon here, because we wanted to make sure that this collaboration is not just we're having a conversation about a recommendation that goes to another recommendation that goes to another group and whatnot, that we really want to see what that could look like in practice. And for us in the district, it has a really direct policy, practice, and budgetary implications. So we want this committee to be in a place to be able to have those conversations. So originally, when we designed this, was to also have to make sure that the number of adults did not overpower the number of young people. So that was something that was important to us. So in the original format, we had the co-chairs, Gordon and I, and then one representative from each additional school. So 5 additional students, and then 3 district and government staff. So 1 person from the city, and that's Ruben, 1 person from the county, that's Andrew, and then 1 person from leadership at the district, and that's Angie, Dr. Angie Hicks, who's not with us, was not able to make it to our meeting today. 3 members at large to help shape the work and provide additional information. So a teacher or a teacher representative, a student support staff, and any other central office staff. And so right now, those representatives are Rebecca, thank you so much, Dr. Ramirez, for being here, Michael Jones representing MTI, and we also had sent an invite to a East High School student security staff. and he was not able to be here with us. We also had set up some additional support staff that would not, those folks would have voting rights and be able to make decisions for the group. And then we also have support staff that could come from MMSD or from the city or from the county. And that's sort of the format of that main body of folks that will be having those discussions and fleshing out the conversations. But what was also important was, how do we create some meaningful structures where this group of folks that have a level of understanding and also now are giving authority for voting to hear from particular bodies of our community that can inform our work. And so we frame them as stakeholder subgroups. And definitely one that is really important is having a youth and family stakeholder group, where the core team will meet with the stakeholder group and have similar discussions around the visions of safety and wellness for the school district, and also being able to make recommendations around budget policy and practices. And then we needed a liaison for that group. And so Mari, you came as a recommendation for a parent liaison for that group. We wanted to also have a stakeholder subgroup that was formed by community partners and advocates. So Dana and Sabrina, you are the people that came up as liaisons for that group. And then we also have another subcommittee stakeholder subgroup that would be formed by professionals that can inform the group. So other psychologists, mental health professionals, wellness professionals, and elected officials. And so we don't have a liaison for that group as of yet. When we were having these conversations, we weren't sure necessarily like if we could have everyone be part of the core team, given that we would like this core team to meet at least in the very beginning, just so we get some shape in a bi-weekly basis. So this is not a conversation that we're excluding anyone. This is a conversation about what looks like capacity. What does it look like to have a core team be smaller as far as numbers of adults, and having a relationship, and what does it look like, these relationships with the liaisons of stakeholders? Will the liaisons come to the core team meetings, or we'll have separate meetings with the liaisons? So this is an open conversation where we're really shaping and informing how this work can be done. Gordon, I'm going to pass it to you first, for you to also give voice to the design, and then we'll open to the group for additional conversations.
Thank you. So as like Ananda said, that for the core team, we want to ensure that the youth have a very formidable position in terms of like voting. And we also want to make sure that we do reach out to community members. So that's why we have some people from, the district or local government, and those who can be partners within their own trade. And then for the community stakeholders, that stakeholder group is like, it's vital to, carry out our initiatives and also getting community support and contribution. We envision like a stakeholder group dedicated to youth and family public engagement members. So what that just entails, are, families, even more students, those from who can represent students of the LGBTQIA+ community, from disability community, and other marginalized groups. And then we want to move in more so into like community partners advocates. So, again, disability rights advocates. As we see here, we have Briar Patch, and we do have someone here for RCC, which is Dana. which is another vital partnership that we want to maintain with here in this committee. And lastly, any more professional support, because we understand that this work, we would need to hear a lot from the professionals to do this work on a daily basis, right? These might be the people who work with youth directly in terms of mental health support, or those who deal with behavior on a weekly basis in our own schools. And I just think that, with the stakeholder meetings, we want to meet with them as, when, of course, at a needed basis, but ensure that when we meet with them, they have it, that we actually take in consideration what they're saying, because these are the people who are not only experienced in this in their own respected fields, but also like witness these things hands-on. And, in terms of our own core group, it's already says here in the proposed document, but if you all have any conflicts with that, I'm pretty sure we can work on that. Anna, do you have anything else to add?
No, I wanted to open to the group for more conversations.
Mhm.
Yes, Ruben.
Yeah, thanks for letting me talk. So I'm happy with the students being the majority representation for this group. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think it'd be really hard to have every identity represented in the meeting all the time. And so, I trust that the students are going back to their constituency, the students, and talking about these conversations that we're having in this group and getting that feedback on a regular basis. I don't know if there's mechanisms that the school already has that would be easier for large regular meetings with students or getting that feedback. But I just think it might be difficult to try to check every box, and I don't know if that would be necessarily the most productive. And I just wanted to say I trust the students to kind of be our connection to the student voice.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Gordon.
Yes, thank you for that. You bring up a very good point. I do know that with students, we will do a lot of more outreach into students at our own respective schools. I do know we also want to work with the Student Senate, which is essentially like a district-wide student government. And through that, we will use their media channels to relay to students more so of community updates and how they can contribute at their own schools as well.
Anyone else? Yeah, Sabrina, go ahead.
I'm like, where is it in the reactions?
Yeah.
We're like, oh, there we go. Okay. My only thing is, and I'm just going to be, I know we're being recorded and everything, but the way, not necessarily the way around Robert's rules, but there has to be a way to sort of gather information from those young people, like whether we're on a street corner, whether you're in a lunchroom, whether you're in the hallway, and still capture that information and bring it back here, because oftentimes young people who really need to have their voices heard and their parents are not able to participate in sort of like these traditional ways of meeting, even though we're on Zoom. So there has to be some sort of way to capture their feedback. And even if it's a 10-minute interaction, and we're able to use that input in this space. So that definitely has to figure out how to be considered, because, young people are not going to always, what about the young people who are sort of disengaged and are not really connected to students who are in leadership roles within the schools, for example. So I just really want to encourage us how to edit the rules, but still get the feedback, that we need here. So that's my piece.
Thanks, Sabrina. Ari?
Yeah, I just wanted to inquire. I don't think the document explicitly said that this is a committee addressing the safety and wellness of high schoolers exclusively. So are we factoring in the input from elementary and middle school student needs as well? I mean, I know for maturity reasons, they're not going to serve on the committee, but in terms of input, is that a consideration as well?
That's a good question, Mari. I think in early conversations with Gordon, we definitely wanted to focus most of the conversations around high schoolers, both because of where we are in our current landscape, But as I was thinking about, the stakeholder for parents, making sure to have parents of elementary school and middle school students as well. Yeah, do you have a particular recommendation for us to consider?
I don't, but I would love to think about it.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Dana?
So one of the things I'd like for us to think about is an outreach team. So, we have this group and we're expecting, even when you have communication, you're expecting people to engage with that communication. And the one thing that I've learned about outreach is you have to be in the space where the people are to do that outreach. So making sure that we're keeping in mind non-traditional spaces. Where are people gathering? Where does it make sense to go to? What groups are out there that we can outreach to and be in community with, and to address the middle school issue. I will say most of the students that I talk to talk about how what happened to them in middle school escalates in high school. So the middle schools are a very vital part of that. And additionally, the other thing I want to find out is whether or not the administrators at each of these high schools is behind this plan and understand what it is that's happening. Because if you have an administrator who is not behind it, you won't get the engagement from the school. We saw that at East, how one administrator engaged versus how others engage. So making sure that we are in community with the administrators that are actually working at these schools.
That's a great point. One thing that I wanted to ask in particular, Mari, Dana, and Sabrina, how do you all see your connections to the core team? Are you thinking that you would like to attend every core team meeting? Are you thinking about once a month at the core team meeting? Since you we're going to ask you all to also, help us host those, additional stakeholder groups. Sabrina, I see your hand.
So if it looks like these meetings, or at least I saw a couple noted on the agenda or the plan, this time is ideal for me because it's, after I'm winding down from the Progress Center. So I can attend these in person or virtual every 2 weeks, once a month. Preferably for me, 2 weeks actually is best, more so than a month, because I will be lost and you will lose me. So the engaging more frequently to stay up to date is best just individually for me, but I can, check in if we decide for a month. And then, my biggest feedback is just, or the biggest want to be concerned about is catching those young people who often are just not at any table except for the wrong table. So.
Yeah, noted. Dana or Mary?
I agree mostly with Sabrina. This is a time that works quite well for me, and 2 weeks every 2 weeks is a very reasonable commitment. So I'm happy to be here if you guys want me.
Currently, if we keep it around 5 o'clock, that 5 o'clock time is a better time. There are boards that I'm on that will start at 7. So it sure would be nice to be able to have a couple of minutes before my next meeting. But also, I'm fine with every 2 weeks. I just need to know in advance, if we have a set date and time, then I can make schedule time.
No, thank you. So we are thinking to have just the first every 2 weeks for the first month or maybe couple months, just so we can get the work lift up and all those logistics out of the way, so we can get into the to the charge of the group. And that was going to be my next question around the 5 and 5:30. And now I'm going to open to the rest of the group Rebecca, Mia, Ruben, Michael, and Andre, like how is the 5 to 6:30? That's our plan. All right. Yes, Mia.
5 to 6:30 or like anytime around there works great for me because after school commitments are all done then, and I can just come home and be on Zoom, or I can go in person or whatever we do in the future. So that works great.
So much. I saw a lot of thumbs up. So we're just gonna keep moving. I wanted to just get some clarity. Well, I wanted to ask if it's clear. This connections to the stakeholder group will host this group will host those 3 stakeholder groups periodically or as needed. Maybe we needed to have, I love that folks are thinking definitely having to have at least one in person and one in Zoom to accommodate multiple schedules and people's needs. But also wanted to check in with folks. What thoughts do you have, or how do you see the ways in which we can bring the ideas from the stakeholder groups to this group? Michael.
Yes, I think the stakeholder groups are really well thought out. I would just also ask that classroom teachers and staff, as well as building in school like mental health professionals, are part of this work as part of one of these stakeholder groups. I'm not sure if they'd be under related professionals and officials, or maybe even the youth and family public engagement members, since families and students are going to be in that space. Just because in terms of, and I'm just thinking of what Dana pointed out in terms of the middle school, transition and those experiences really impacting high school experiences. What goes on in the classroom, what goes, in terms of what we're dealing with in terms of training, in terms of supports, in terms of trauma-informed practices, in terms of ongoing follow-up, like in terms of recognizing and being able to report and support students in those spaces. I think we really need to make sure that we have the educators also on the same page in order to engage with that work, because there have been times of frustration where a student might be exhibiting something, but the educator might not either be trained enough to actually engage competently with it, or not enough educators to sufficiently support the student all students in a systemic way. So if we can just make sure that's also part of the discussion.
So Mike, I agree with you 100%. And I also heard the middle school and the principals. And so I'm wondering if we wanted to add one additional stakeholder groups that is formed by MMSD staff that includes a few of the high school and maybe a few middle school principals, and then the teacher and student services staff. How do you all feel about that? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd obviously be in favor of it, just because I think, in terms of especially the experiences of this past year, there's definitely members have communicated a strong need to make this a focus and to be able to have the tools to support our students the best way we can.
Yeah, and I wouldn't limit that to just your middle school and high school. I mean, the board just made a decision a couple of months ago to get rid of suspension of first or kindergarten through 5th grade. So I think developmentally we need to include all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school, if we're really going to put together a comprehensive recommendations regarding policy and practice.
Awesome. So as far as number of participants, I can, because of my relationships and my previous work, I can name a lot of folks that are partners in the district that could be important key folks for the stakeholders. But we would love to hear you all's recommendations for both, like, for parents, additional students, the teaching staff, as well as thinking about the other group, the elected officials and other professionals, if there are professionals that that you have been working with as partners or have connections with the district in any ways. It'd be great to get those recommendations. And when Gordon and I were thinking about this, we wanted to make sure that those stakeholder groups stay small, so we have meaningful conversation, and there's a relationship. This is not just like another listening session, another open forum, like that folks are being recommended to serve a role, to be informing this work. So my added question is going to be, are we as a core group now, all those people that are here and potentially a few more students, will be in every stakeholder group, or do you want just maybe a smaller section of us, or maybe just the co-chairs go to the stakeholder groups? And I'm thinking about specifically some folks talking about, so yeah, we're going to have every 2 weeks. And then, even if we go to once a month, that means that it might be 2 meetings a month or maybe more, because we might schedule some back-to-back stakeholder meetings. So I'm thinking about logistics and also thinking about capacity of folks. So what do you all think? Should we just meet as a whole group with the entire stakeholder group, which might be 7 to 13 folks? Yeah, everyone.
Sorry, I might be misunderstanding. So are we having several small stakeholder groups, or are we having one small stakeholder group?
Right now, we're going to have 4. I think I'm hearing folks saying 4 small stakeholder groups. They are not listening sessions. There will be recommended folks in those 4 areas that we talked about.
Yeah, and so I mean, in that case, I don't know if they've been like labeled in some way yet, but it might make sense for some of us to be in some of them more than others if we already understand something about that group or already connected in some way. I don't know if they're already listed on this.
Yes.
Plan.
Yeah, so on page 3 at the end, so that's the youth and families, the community partners and advocate, and then the related professional officials. And then the the 4th one that's coming up is the MMSD, elementary, middle, and high school staff.
Mm-hmm.
So I like your idea that we maybe do a sign up for each of the groups, so it doesn't, and I agree with you. I think, yeah, I see you definitely being in the elected officials one, and maybe the community one. So yes, Andre.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of structurally, if we're looking to kind of keep those stakeholder groups smaller, I wouldn't think bringing this whole group to that group, then we outnumber the stakeholder group. But I do think there needs to be some connection. So whether that would be you and Gordon that were a part of that, or if a member or a chair of those stakeholder groups would serve on the core team, and they would be the linkage and connection back. But yeah, I wouldn't think we would have us, however many, 12, 13, 14 people go to their group, and then there's 6 or 7 additional people. It seems that the purpose of keeping it smaller and engaged in that group may be diluted somewhat.
Love it. How are other folks feeling? You can respond with your reactions. Your reactions button. So what I heard Andrea suggesting is that for when we hold the stakeholder groups is definitely the chair. So Mari is the chair, and maybe we'll have a co-chair for the family and youth as well. And Mari will be there. Definitely Gordon and I will be there, and maybe we assign 1 or 2 folks from this group to also be a part of that group, and then we'll have time in our meeting structure to provide some updates. Is that what you said, Andrea?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to overpower that group and bring more people that aren't in the group into the group, unless it's needed for a particular, meeting or a request or something like that. But I do think that connection needs to be there. So whether that's, in that example, Mari, that's the sole person, or Mari, you and Gordon, or whatever combination, but certainly those stakeholder members should outnumber the number that aren't in the stakeholder group that are there.
Great. Any other thoughts? And I saw some nods and I saw some thumbs up. Gordon, how are you navigating this? Is this going to what you're thinking?
Yeah, I definitely think at co-chairs, it is our responsibility to be part of those stakeholder meetings. And in terms of having additional core members part of those stakeholder meetings, I think it depends on if it's needed or not. Mr. Johnson made a very good point about, not making sure we're not trying to overpower anyone, and that they all feel comfortable, that we only have those who can best relate to the group and their identity. So yeah, I think anyone who, it just depends on what field you practice and if you have something to contribute to that particular stakeholder group.
In those stakeholder groups, will the same questions be posed for them to do problem solving around, and will we have like a good structured feedback for this committee to digest and really integrate into our thinking?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the next, that's a little bit to our next point around the creation of this vision for safety and wellness. So we're gonna start the meeting next time with an activity around beginning to form what that could look like. And so we can use some of those guiding questions. We can come up with some other guiding questions for the group. I think the idea is to be clear and communicate like the purpose and the charge of this work, and also being able to meaningfully hear feedback and then begin to think about what does that vision look like. And the addition to that is how this vision are informing policy, practice, or have budgetary implications as the district is also going through their budget right now. So Rebecca, it's open for discussion, and definitely in our next agenda item, how do we want to do that? But we wanted to do this with this group first. We're gonna kind of prototype what that could look like, and then think about how do we want it to structure. And I want to also honor the chairs of each group to also kind of think about how would they like to design, how they would like to structure. And I'm thinking, Rebecca, that there will be some thread throughout, but each group, the dynamic will be a little bit different just because of their role and who they are. All right. So as we move to this, to the creation of the shared vision, as I mentioned, we'll dedicate most of our meeting next time to do, again, some introduction with the hopes that we'll have a large representation of our group, as I know some folks were not able to make it today. And then also wanted to check in with you all about how do you all feel about creating for the district to host a web page, so we can make sure that information is being disseminated to our community and our families and our students. Barb and I have talked also about a dedicated email to this group. And we'll also love to hear what other ways that you think that us as a core group can continue to make sure that this communication is transparent and clear to folks. Gordon, I'm gonna pass it to you first, and then I saw Sabrina.
Yeah, I would say that definitely having a web page would be essential, and to also to make sure that we release some type of like, monthly infographics or any other type of like updates through social media. And the reason why I say that is because, social media is heavily used among the youth and amongst, younger families as well. So if you want to truly capture that audience and, really target their attention, I think we might have to go through social media a lot. So I think both having a web page and using Madison School's current social media platforms to spread our updates and anything else will be essential.
Thank you, Gordon. Sabrina?
That's exactly where I was going, where Mr. Allen has gone to social media. So I guess my two thoughts is my guess is that the young people are not getting stipends to serve in this capacity, because my second thing was like, can young people either who are serving in this role on this committee, could they get access to the district's social media pages with some monitoring if needed, but not just like Facebook or Twitter, but young people are on Snapchat and TikTok. So I'm just thinking about like creative and innovative ways to get the communication out there. That's just not like the district's Facebook page, which is Facebook is really trending for, older folks now, us. So I definitely would love to see whether or not we can get young people who have some access to this committee, creating reels in Instagram or TikToks, or probably not Snapchat, but TikTok and reels on Instagram.
Yeah, great, Sabrina. I know that Tim, our communications person, is going to have a student over the summer for an internship. So I think I'm looking forward to ramping up our social media footprint. Ruben?
Yeah, I just want to say it's hard for me to have an opinion on this because I'm not sure of what communications we'd be putting out there. I can't exactly picture what decisions we're gonna be making. And I also don't know what MMSD already puts out to families and to students. So I think that would be helpful to just have context before I am helpful in this conversation.
Yeah, I think the context would be primarily around what we're discussing. So about this group and the stakeholder meetings and some key findings. I see Sabrina and Dana, and then we're gonna start wrapping up.
Quickly at like thinking about informing groups, for example, the East High parent group, there was conversation about people wanting to know about this group. So finding out about those various Facebook groups tied to each high school or middle or elementary school would be important for us to be able to share what we can there as well.
Dana?
As a parent that receives communication from our schools, our communication is fairly poor. I tend to get some type of email, usually after something's happened or the day that something is going on. So, if we are wanting to communicate with folks, intentional communication with time for people to, when I was a single mom, they would contact me about the Black parent group. I would get a phone call and an email like the day before. Well, I can't make that the day before. So making sure that whatever communication that we have is intentional. And this is where, for example, an outreach team where people are in the schools talking to the kids, outside talking to the parents. There's a lot of parents that are engaged and outside of West High School every day. And I know that same with East. So having us be our faces and in the spaces, because those emails just are not good enough. And I wish that I was smart enough to know how to utilize all of the Instagram stories. But like in 10 minutes, I have like 15 other people's whose stories come up, and then I got to find the story. And that's a lot for my 46-year-old brain. I can't get that far. So making sure that we are just really intentional about how we're having these conversations.
I love it, Dana. Thank you so much. And thank you for giving the feedback around our current state. So Barb and I have already been talking about scheduling a meeting to find out like what's our current capacity around communication and what that could look like. So we can definitely bring this up to folks once we know a little bit more information. I want to check with you, Barb, if there was anything around logistics, and then I want to use the last 10 minutes of our time for just a round of closing.
I think everybody for this committee has been very up. I mean, I only sent out one communication and told you about board docs. That's where my main thing is coming from. So if everybody is comfortable with that, that's a very big leap for me. Logistics wise, yeah, no, whatever you want to do with a regular meeting time, cadence is beneficial for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Barb. So I want to take this final 10 minutes to just go around and a sentence or less on how are you leaving this group. And I can give it like just a few seconds for folks to sort of take some time to reflect, and then once you're done sharing your sentence, pass it to somebody else. I'll start in motto. I feel honored by y'all's presence and commitment. Dana, I'll pass it to you.
I just love being able to look out into the space of Black folks. Like it's a rare thing where I have a meeting and that is a thing. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to shoot over to Andre.
Say encouraged, and I'm really happy that the balance of students to us older adults is where it is. I've been in a lot of spaces where we talk about youth voice, but that isn't planned in the same way that it's being talked about here. So I'm encouraged by that. And it is good seeing all your faces as well.
Would you like to pass it to Andre?
And I will pass it to Ruben.
I'll say that I'm feeling curious to see what we find out, what we hear over the next few months and year, and hopeful, like I'm hearing everybody else say. And I'll pass it over to Mia.
I'm very thankful for this group and like everyone gathering here, and in efforts to like create this committee to overall help the safety and wellness of our district and our kids in it. I'll pass it to Mari.
I feel optimistic and also challenged and sort of hungry for feedback and for action items so we can really hit the ground running. And I will pass it to Sabrina.
Okay. I'm really just thinking about, I hope that Gordon and Mia have saved everyone's names and email addresses to hit us up for letters of recommendations when you need them. So.
Breaking the rules again.
Yeah, who has not?
My bad. Let me see. Gordon, let's give it to Gordon.
Obviously, I feel honored to do this work with you all, and I am optimistic to see what can we do to ensure that students in our school not only feel safe but sense of well-being and community. And I will pass it on to Rebecca.
For somebody who's been on a million boards throughout my life, I'm hopeful to accomplish something that really creates change that is equitable and culturally sensitive. I will pass it to Michael. Have you spoken?
I haven't. Thank you. I am excited to be in a space when discussing safety and wellness that is humanizing and not demonizing. So thank you all for creating and sharing that sort of space. Is there, I apologize. I believe, is that everyone? Barb, did you want to speak on it?
Thank you, Michael, but no. I'm supporting only. Thank you, though.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for calling Barb. We do that all the time, and she says no a lot. Well, sometimes she participates. So I'm really grateful for you all's time. And this is the time that we love to entertain a motion to adjourn. Can someone make a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Ruben, and is
Second.
there Andrea's second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Or
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nays? Motion carry. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ananda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
You are
Thank you.
very much appreciated.
Thanks, Barb.
Barbara can stay on for a little bit.